Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah,
I'm Laura.
and we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are peeking into the Greenbone Saga, and we are finishing up our discussion of the third book, Jade Legacy, the book that
Jade
broke a thousand
Legacy.
hearts. But Laura,
The
before we
book
get
that
into
gave me
it,
so many emotions.
before we get into the reason our hearts are broken, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I've actually been reading quite a bit.
That's what you said.
Yeah, so I'm back on Children of Ruin. I kind of put it to the side for a little while I was doing a lot of reading for the podcast.
Hmm.
And these books are so smart. This one was I I would say that it's probably not as quick to fall into as the first one was, just because the way that things ended with the first one, I it was practically a standalone. But
Hmm.
getting into this one, we're starting to get into some familiar territory now at the part that I'm at, and I'm starting to kind of pick up on what's going on. Whereas,
Mm.
like from from the beginning, I did not always know what's going on because he's kind of thrown Adrian Tchaikovsky is kind of throwing me for a loop a little bit at the beginning here. But
Okay.
a small spoiler, we're dealing with multiple timelines, and that was messing with my brain. So
Right.
now that I figured that out, I'm back on track
Oh,
and
good.
uh, getting into this one again. And I really think that Adrian Tchaikovsky is just so smart, and I kind of hate him a little bit for being so smart and writing something this good. It's
Okay.
it's so different and so well written, where
Hmm.
you can tell that there was like a perfect amount of research done to like even get some of these creatures and side characters and these technologies even just like briefly mentioned, where it's like, yeah, even just like that one paragraph explanation probably took a lot of research. So
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by these books. It's unreal.
Oh, good.
But I haven't finished it yet. I did finish though Yellowface by R.F.
You
Kuang.
read it
Yes,
without
I
me?
did.
Oh my gosh, what'd you think about it? Did you like it?
I have a lot of feelings about it actually.
Okay.
So I will keep this very spoiler free. So Yellowface is a thriller lit fic type
Mhm.
book about a white woman who presents a piece of work as her own when it actually was written by an Asian writer, an
Hmm.
Asian woman. So this book kind of it is infuriating and also so real, and you can understand the motivations that Kwong had for writing this, and you also feel deeply for her when you're
Hmm.
reading some of these things because you're like, she obviously had these emotions if she was going to write this and write a scene like this. You can feel her in a lot of the writing, and you can also feel the frustration that she's having. And so I totally related to, I shouldn't say related. I totally empathized with all of those things in Yellowface.
Yeah.
My thing was with this book, there was so much buildup, and the ending did not end the way I wanted it to. It fell a little flat for me, where I was just like,
Okay.
there was all this buildup and a lot of tension and a lot of me kind of being frustrated and wanting certain things to happen. And then it just kind of ended and nothing had happened. And that frustrated me a little bit. And I get it that this is the real world and sometimes we get ambiguous endings, but
Right.
I wanted a fictional tale and this was not the book for that. And
Right.
I can understand why Kwong went the direction she did, but it doesn't mean I have to like it.
That is very true and good to remember.
But yeah, I think it's a really good book. I do think it brings up a lot of discussions as to how we as reviewers and readers need to consider not only what we're reading, like the material and who has written it, who's the right person to tell a story,
Hmm.
and who, like, if the characters are accurately presenting a certain group. Um, I also think it's important to consider like feelings that people may have and how the things we say in either podcasts or on the internet or via, even if you're emailing an author, I mean, please never tag authors in negative
Oh yeah.
reviews. But I think even if we're writing negative reviews or talking about pieces of lit that we don't necessarily agree with or we have problems with, we need to still like remember that these are real people that have written these things, that
Right.
we need to consider that not even if we don't agree with themes or things that the authors have done, that this is a lot of work that has gone into this. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a person's life work and
Right.
it there's a lot of emotions. And so I think considering those things is like really crucial to
Right.
like one of the themes in this for me was like you really need to think about the way that you review and talk about not only books but all forms of media really on the internet, because there are real people behind these things, and it's really easy for reviewers to just hide behind their phone or a screen and to say negative things. And authors say, oh, I never look at reviews. Well, some people do. And uh it can really damage a person's self-esteem. And
Yeah.
I really hope that if you're somebody that's reviewing things on Instagram or the social media network that will not be named, or wherever you have a blog or if you have another podcast, I really hope people keep in mind that there's real people creating these things. Even if we don't agree with them, we still need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say it's in my mind kind of a thriller, but I just didn't like the ending. I
Oh
wanted more justice.
no.
I wanted
Yeah.
more justice. And again, I get it. Kwong went a certain way because the world doesn't always provide justice. And that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I also read, let's see, volumes 3 and 4 of Spy Family by Tetsuya
Mm.
Endo. And this is a really fun book or manga series. I I wouldn't say that this series is having like the emotion. I'm not having like the emotional ups and downs with this series that I'm having with another manga series that I'm reading. But I would say that this is just a fun one, that if you are kind of looking for something cutesy and fun and there's a little bit of action and you want some laughs, this is a fun manga to check out. There's some different fantasy elements that are thrown in here because we now have spoiler a dog that can see the future.
Oh
So
my gosh, it's so
that
cute.
it's a cute add-in character.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say that it necessarily has like all these like deeper themes and you're learning all these things. It's just a cute, fun manga.
Yeah.
But the manga that is starting to really pull at my heartstrings is Witch Hat Atelier. And I have a feeling that there's only 11 volumes out. I am through volume 9 and I'm getting nervous. I'm going to have to be done with this, but for a while until more volumes are released. But this series actually does have a lot of deeper themes and messages and questions about how the world works. And even though it's a fantasy tale about witches who are young witches, like apprentices who are trying to learn how to be witches, there's still all these themes of who's the right person to do this and who's the right person to make changes in the world. There's class issues, there's a lot of different moral questions that are brought up. And
Right.
I really really love this series and how the characters are growing and changing. And we also have a lot of like side plots that are coming in now with different characters backstories being revealed. And
Oh,
it's a really really great series. And
good.
with each volume I feel like they just keep getting better, and I think that's hard to do, but this author is doing it. It's Kamome Shirahama is the
Okay.
author. If I've mispronounced that, please come at me, because this author and illustrator, they all deserve all of the praise that they can get, because this is a really, really great manga. And then the
Nice.
last one I will talk about today, I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren via audio.
Oh yeah, Christina Lauren. Laura's a huge fan.
I am a huge fan of Christina Lauren, and I particularly like their audiobooks. So I don't know what it is about that. But this one was not, I guess, your typical Christina Lauren, not your typical romance, honestly. It kind of threw me for a loop about halfway through. Something happens and the direction of the story changes. And I really enjoyed that actually, where it was not
Oh,
your typical, like, because early on in the book, there's a presented miscommunication. Classic
yeah,
romance. There's a
of course.
miscommunication,
Always.
obviously. So I was like, okay, here it is. Well, then it's kind of resolved early on, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so then we're thrown for a loop in the plot, and I kind of found that shocking and refreshing that they would write something like this because it seemed like it was more of a risk, I guess,
Yeah.
in terms of a romance story because you're kind of branching out and not just sticking to your typical formula where it's like, there's a miscommunication. They resolve it. They have one more miscommunication in the third act. Brief sex. Then we're going to. So,
Brief sex.
yeah. But it's different from their usual work. And I really appreciated that. I would not say this is like the best romance I've ever read or anything, but for me, it's a solid read. I would say it's a good book. I
Yeah.
I think I just really liked that it went in a different direction from the usual romance formula. And for me, that made me rate it higher because I
Mm,
wasn't expecting what happened.
that's good.
Yeah. Hannah, what have you been reading?
Um, so I went on a vacation this weekend. So I finally got into a book that I've been trying to read a little bit more of. But do you ever have a book where it's like it's good, it's just you never feel like reading it? uh
You mean like you haven't picked it up yet?
like I picked it up and then I would like read 100 pages and I was like, that was a
Mhm.
fun 100 pages. I was very interested. I put it down. I don't feel like picking it up again for a
Okay,
while.
yes, I do know what you're saying because I do
Yeah.
this too, where I'll try to figure out what I want to read next because I'm very much a mood reader. So I'll
Hmm.
read like 50 pages of several books, and then I'm like, okay, well, I've started seven here, and I guess
See
I'm
if I
going with
can
this
whittle
one.
this down. Yeah, so I started reading Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. And it was pretty good. Like I enjoyed it. It's a very interesting book. It's kind of like a modern story that picks up on Baba Yaga's ancestry. So Baba Yaga is a Russian folklore person who is Jewish, or at least is Jewish in these books. And it's Eastern European, sorry, Eastern European folklore. Baba Yaga is well known in that. I said my only, I was talking to my partner's sister, and I was like, my only experience with Baba Yaga is from Bartok the Magnificent, which was a direct to movie video sequel of Anastasia. And he has to go find Baba Yaga in the woods. So I am obviously an expert.
Isn't that the bat?
Yeah.
I am also an expert in
uh,
Russian history. I knew that was
so
the bat.
and the duck of the night to
Okay,
find
that
her.
is a bop.
That song has no business being that good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Das
What a bop.
Vidania, your grace. Farewell. Do you know who's
I
the
love that
voice
so
of
much.
that?
What did you say?
You know who the voice of
I
the
don't know who
evil
the
villain
voice
is?
is.
I'm pretty sure it's Christopher. Yeah, it's Christopher Lloyd.
Okay,
That's a
perfect.
dispute. No notes. Like
Perfect.
Anastasia is the perfect encapsulation of 90s movies because it's Christopher Lloyd, Hank Azaria as Bartok, Meg Ryan as Anastasia, and John Cusack as Dimitri. Why
Yeah.
was
What a
who
random
was
assortment. They were like, we need all the really popular people right now.
and the
They
Dowager is Angela Lansbury.
Well, they just picked all the
Why?
popular movies. They're like Back to the Future, You've Got Mail, and all the
Murder
other
She Wrote.
romances. Murder She Wrote and Beauty and the
Oh,
Beast.
they did look at this is a who's who's of the 90s because guess who the like fun psych Dimitri's fun sidekick is? Kelsey Grammer. Good
Uh,
God, Niles.
Here's my thing. He's not a fun sidekick.
He's not a fun sidekick. Why would you pick him? Because
They
he's
should have picked
famous in the
Niles.
90s. Oh my gosh, I love Niles. I've been falling asleep to Frasier, and I forget how funny that show is. I know we're not like talking about Struck Work, but is out so long ago, guys. It does not
Yeah.
matter. And I'm pretty sure Kelsey Grammer is a huge Republican, so
Yeah.
we can discuss his work. But I forgot how funny that show is. Like the other night, I was listening to it as I went to bed, and I laughed out loud because like they're taking their family photo like early in October for Christmas. And then he and his dad start fighting. And Daphne's like, boys, stop arguing. Don't you know what day it is? And Frasier goes, it's October 21st. And it's like the funniest line reading. I just love that show. It's so good. But why would you make him the psychic? Doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to the historical text that is Anastasia and Baba
Yes.
Yaga. This is like a very modern fairy tale. Like the person who wrote it is like she got her master's, I think, in folklore, so she's very good at it. But it's about these two children who like, well, they're adults now, but they're in their early ages of adulthood, and they were like raised in a traveling troupe, and that you they're estranged, and they both inherit this house with chicken legs on it,
Hmm.
and it walks around. And so the brother gets the sister to agree to go on tour with him to do like this puppet show so that they can raise money. And if she agrees to do this with him for a year, then he will let her keep the house. And then throughout this entire thing, you find out that like they both have some type of magical power that comes with like a lot of strings. Get it, puppet?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and
I'm right there.
and it's very interesting to watch because it's like dealing with different family dynamics throughout the book. You hear from the house's perspective about Baba Yaga and her history, um, and a lot about things like the Civil War that happened in Russia and World War I and World War II and all of that stuff that went into that, and like how things and how trauma can live and exist in the world. So it's a very good book. It was just like so good but so deep that like I had to be in the right mood to read it. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I had to return it to the library once, and then I kind of was like, oh, I'll read a couple other books. So by the time I got through it, I was like, oh, this is really good. And like, I have to give it 4 stars, but I also wish I could just give it 3 because I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as other
Okay.
people did, but I know it was good enough for 4, So like it was a
Okay.
very complicated read for me. Um, and it's also her debut novel. So I also wonder if it's like she's such a good writer and so detailed that like
Hmm.
some of the things that I had issues with, or some of the like more rigid of the flowingness for me, would be ironed out in her next book where she like got a little bit more. But like people love this book. It has many reviews. It was a book of the month and everything.
Hmm.
So
I'm
um
usually willing to kind of forgive some things in like an author's first work like that, where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is kind of annoying. This is a little repetitive, but
right.
it's probably just because it's their first book.
Right. So it was good. I enjoyed it. It was nice to like read outside. I For context, everyone, I was on my 1 year anniversary trip. And I got a tiny home that was in a place called Mountainshire in the Smoky Mountains. It was like Hobbit house themed. It was like a tiny house that had like
It
a
was the
round
Shire,
door. It was the Shire. It was really cool.
and they had a
Um,
hobbit hole.
but I got to read about like folklores in the Mountainshire, and that was
That's cool.
pretty cool. So I liked the ambience of it, which helped a lot. And then I also read my second of Elizabeth Acevedo's work. I read
Hmm.
Poet X.
Okay,
Um,
how was it?
I loved it. So
Did you
like
read Clap When You Land? Is that the other one you read?
yes, and I
Okay.
read Clap with You When You Land. Just reading it like with the
Hmm.
physical book, and with the Poet X, because I know that Elizabeth Acevedo often writes in verse. I read it via audiobook. So, and I think Elizabeth Acevedo read it herself, which was
Oh,
very fun
cool.
to listen to. Um, it is very good. I even listened to it at only 1.25 speed so that I could
Mhm.
actually hear the verse in it, because I do
Sure.
think that that could have been lost if you were listening as fast as I usually listen to it. So it's a
Hmm.
quick book, um, but it follows Xiomara, who feels like she's 15. She is like a well-developed girl who's
Hmm.
living in New York. Her mother is an immigrant from the Dominican Republic who like didn't really want to be married to her father. She wanted to be a nun. But her family got their father to agree to marry her so that she could come to America. But because of that, she's deeply religious.
Mhm.
And she had children later in life. So she and their father are older. And Xiomara has a twin who she calls Twin. And he's incredibly brilliant and very faithful. And Xiomara is seen as the problem child, and she
Mhm.
fights for her brother. Um, and she has lots of issues with her brother. But she like tries really hard to be good, but she has a lot of complicated feelings because she is 15 and she does have like sexual attraction to men, and
Mhm.
she like has issues with like she doesn't know if she believes in God or not, you know. So
Okay.
there's a lot going on. And she feels very untethered, and she writes about it in poetry. And so I really loved this book. It has a lot of complex things about identity, about religion, about like flawed parenting,
Mhm.
and like how certain things can lead to like parents not wanting to hear their children. um and it's a difficult one. I would say that like there's no happy ending or shiny happy ending with this book,
Okay.
but it does show different methods of conflict resolution, which I really loved. Like towards the end, she and her
Mhm.
mom are in
Mhm.
conflict a lot. um and she does like want to have a relationship with her mother, but she's also scared to have a relationship with her mother.
Sure.
um and she also, there's just like so much to this. It was wonderfully written, and it just plays with things really well. Like there are moments where she writes a, a homework assignment honestly and like directly raw, and then she'll write it like what I actually turned in, and you'll see like how many layers she's putting on herself. And it deals with a lot of
That's
stuff
really
like,
cool.
yeah, and I think it deals a lot of with like really cool things for young women to read about, because it also talks about like being a kid who's in a developed body. And
Yeah.
like I've been there. Like I was
Mhm.
definitely that kid, and like having people look at you a certain way when you still feel so young.
Mhm.
um and like she is angry about it, and she does like raise her fists and does fight for herself. But even that takes a lot out of you, so she just wants like someone to stick up for her. So I really loved this book. I thought it was really good. I cannot wait to read the next one, which I think is the one you've read. So
Yeah, with the fire on
um
high. That's the one
yes,
that I read.
and so I loved these. I can't wait to read more, and yeah, it was just really good. But with that, I will say some other ones for next week in case I don't read anything. Laura, should
Okay.
we dive in to our final discussion on Jade Legacy?
Yes, let's do it.
All
Hannah,
right.
where do you want to start? Where do we start?
Do we end with Hilo or do we start with Hilo?
I mean, I feel like we got to end with Hilo.
Okay.
He,
Um,
Hilo.
oh my
Why?
gosh. So let's talk about Wen a little bit then. We'll start with Wen
Okay.
and we'll end with Hilo.
Okay. So when is Wen still your favorite character at this point?
Hmm. I don't know. It might be Hilo now. Like, I still love Wen. I have such a deep
Mhm.
appreciation for Wen and how flawed
Here's
she
my
is and
thing.
how
I
amazing she
I
is.
am like so connected to all of the characters at this point because they it feels like we've sat with them through so much and they've experienced so much and they've grown and they've been through terrible things and we've been right there with them. So I feel really connected to all of them. It's hard to say like, oh, this one or that one's my favorite. But I, I think for me when shows like so much growth throughout the entire series that if there were awards to be given out, she would get like the award for most growth because she overcomes so much and has to break so many barriers,
Oh
not
my
just as a
gosh.
woman, but like proving her worth even because I mean we've talked about this before that she could maybe be considered like someone who's disabled within
Mhm.
their community within the Greenbow community. This is not a one-to-one comparison we've noted, but within the Greenbone community and of Jade users, being someone who cannot use Jade would put you at an extreme disadvantage within the culture. And so she has to really overcome a lot. And in this book, she is also overcoming a lot physically from
Mhm.
the things that happened in Jade War. So her relationship with Hilo has to go through a literal roller coaster, and I think by the time we get to the end of this book, I just so appreciate how she has remained literally a rock throughout this entire thing. She has been so loyal to those that she loves and to the clan. Unlike any other character, she has remained extremely loyal and also considers other people's feelings and is smart. And she's just a wonderful character.
Well, so there's something about these books that I think is actually very brilliant. And that's the fact that Fond du Lis sits so long with these characters, we get a family epic. Like this is an epic.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like a because like a lot of other fantasy trilogies, usually it's a set amount of time. Usually it would pretty much be what happened in book 1 and 2, which is like the rise of Hilo into what he like becomes, and like, you know, there's a little bit of tragedy at the end, but that's the end of their story. You know, like that's usually how these stories go. In a lot of fantasies, it's usually the beginning of the story or the ending of the story, but not much in between. Here, we got to sit and see how Shay and Hilo became who they were, how Wen became who she was. And because we got to do that, we got to see all of their messy bits, like seeing Hilo cheat on Wen at the beginning of this book. Wen chooses not to see it that way, but that is kind of what he's doing. And
it is.
Yeah, he's seeking out sex workers, and he's not being with his wife. So like we get to see that happen, and we get to know where their messiness came from, where I think a lot of books would have us open with that, like open with like, oh, they once had this great love, but she betrayed him and he could never love her again, you know. But we got to see all the build up and then the ending of it, to see like how much they loved each other and how much they wanted to be together. And that's like also that's diminishing Wen's role so badly by just focusing on her relationship with Hilo, though, because she just became a whole person. Like she would be such an easy character to push to the sidelines and just have her be the romance. Yeah, she's the wife. He's this awful person who's cheating on her because she did one thing out of line, you know, and she would be used as a way to teach you about Hilo. But Wen is her own person, which is what she had fought for throughout the entire book, which is why you and I loved her, because she fought so hard to be like, I am my own person. I earned my right to be here. I am here. I made this myself. And it works. And it also doesn't stop Wen from being an incredibly flawed character. Like she's quick to cut people off. She's quick to judge them. She is quick to believe that the Greenbone way is the best way and fight for that.
That's something I was going to mention with the kidnapping scene that we have in this book. She's very quick to kind of throw around some of her privilege, where she's like, do you know who I am? I am call Hilo's wife. Like, because she knows that'll get her something. And it's kind of a wake-up call in that situation, because they do not care. And but that I think is one of her flaws, that she's willing to toss around her privilege.
Right. And I mean, she doesn't like ever.
I wouldn't say it's like she's using it to put down people. I think it's more, what can I gain from this? Which is how most of them use it.
I always feel like a little bit at a loss with Wen, because she does a lot of the stuff that we find fault with the most in Hilo, where it's like, oh, you're quick to cut people off. You're not very understanding. You're quick to do this. But for some reason, it grades less. And I think it's because you know that Wen knows how the other side feels. Like Hilo never had to question his power. So he like intrinsically just trusts in it and then makes everyone else suffer, even though that they have had different experiences. Wen has had the different experiences and she still believes in the cause. And she's like, no, I've suffered and I think this is the best way. So this is the way we're going to do it. And it's just like, oh, I can actually understand that a little bit more when it's coming from a place of like learned experience versus just like privileged experience. And so,
well, exactly, because she's grown up being someone who was an outsider for multiple reasons, her family, and because of her stone eye status. So she has not been somebody who has always been super privileged. So I think it is easier to kind of take in what she says and how she does utilize her role as the Pillar's wife because of those things.
And so I love her so much in this series. She seems to have like her fingers in everything by the end of it in such a unique way. And like this is just really a family story at the end of the day, where like it ends with the family all eating a meal together at a restaurant that no one else likes and they just love because it's like a memory to them. So I do love.
What do you think about like her relationship with Nico?
I feel so many ways about that because like she is Nico's mother. Like he is the
Yeah.
first to be like, she is my mom before Hilo is my father.
Hmm.
I am like the most worried about disappointing her. And so I think it's sad when like she does get disappointed by him and she does cut him off and she does like say like, no, I can't support you through this. This isn't
Hmm.
going to work for me. And then she does like it makes you feel so sad because you see so much of the flaws in the system and how Nico gets treated throughout this. Like he's hurting and like they it does suck too because they learned this lesson from Andon where it's like you can't just treat someone like they're meant to fall into a perfect
Yeah.
place. But all the kids were like all like Shay and Hilo did do that eventually. Like Shay was the
Hmm.
first one to fight against it, but she sooner or later fell in line.
Hmm.
But like everyone forgot that Shay later fell in line because they're all like, well, Nico's like disrespecting the family and he's going too far. And it's like, well, everyone kind of did this except Hilo. And so it's hard when you're watching them make the same mistakes they did with Andon and with Shay, where they couldn't just forgive and be like, well, we'll support you through this and then you can come back into the fold when you need to. It's
Hmm.
like, no, because of who you are, you don't even get that option. And that sucks. Like, it sucks seeing a flawed perspective for parents and their children when they could have learned the lesson a little bit earlier.
I think the thing for me that really sticks out that it's kind of inferred in Jade War when they
Mm.
acquire Nico. I'm just going to say acquire because
Well, yeah.
he is brought back to Genlun in very tragic circumstances.
Yeah.
But when we talk about it in Jade War, it's kind of like, oh, well, we kind of get the impression that this is what's happening. But in Jade Legacy, it's made clear that when really kind of pushed for Nico to be brought back into the Call family, pushed Hilo to go seek him out because she was worried that she would not be able to give Hilo an heir
Yeah.
and that their child would be a Stone Eye. And so it is something where their relationship is kind of tense, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not that she's a bad mother to him, but she puts all the pressure in the world on this child. And it's different from her relationship that she has with Rue because she's hard on Rue from a standpoint of having a shared experience and knowing that he is just as capable of things as she is because she's been there and has gone through them. But the way that she puts so much pressure on Nico is tragic in its own way. And I I felt deeply sad for Nico when Wen was very upset with him throughout the book, and when Hilo and Wen were mad at him for taking the job with Jim Sunto, and it was just really hard for me because it felt like they were putting an immense amount of pressure on this child who did not ask for this
Right.
and was kind of brought in just to serve a specific purpose.
Well, then I also felt bad because like it's a big old bummer when they're all sitting there being like, Nico, you are the heir. You have to protect Rue. You have to do this. You have to be the best. And then in the same thread, they're like, why can't you be more fun loving like Hilo? Like they want him to be everything. And it just doesn't work. And it's why he implodes and it's why he like goes
Mm-hmm.
so far as he did because he like just needs to get out and he just doesn't see like a way to do that and live his own life without being like tainted by
Mm-hmm.
being the pillar heir. Like he anything he
Right.
does, he'd have to be part of the clan work. And he's like, I just need out of this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't seem to understand. Like Hilo sort of does because Hilo has the like, you're always my son. Like you get to go do what you need to do. But like Andon has to step in and be like, you guys are doing it wrong. Like you can't
Yeah.
treat him like he's the end all be all because of course he's gonna fold under that pressure. He can't live up to those expectations. Who could? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so it does make you feel terrible for Nico because you just want him to like live his own life. And by the end of it, he is this ha 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 every time jaded person who's just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, the world is terrible. And that's how it is. So, like, I don't know.
The place we
But
get to with Nico, though, is I think, honestly, I think so many of these characters have just like really poetic endings in this trilogy. But Nico is one of the ones that kind of stands out to me more just from some of the things that he says and how he takes his role as a leader with such a different tone where it's not the same goal that Aitmata or even Hilo had going into this, where Nico is more, I don't know if open is the thing I'm looking for, but more considerate of the fact that like maybe not all people need to be in a position of power. And if I'm somebody who's maybe going to be a little more accepting and has seen different sides of this, maybe I'm just a person that is better suited for this than others, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Because like I know I had said I wanted to put a pin in the discussion of like Nico's final discussion with Shay, where she was like, he sounds so much like I like everyone wants to be in power. That's how it is. So you might as well do what you do. I actually like, I don't know. I thought that that was a very powerful moment for Nico. I didn't see it so much
I
as him
didn't
being
see it
like,
as being like I either.
yeah, I kind of saw it more as him being resigned to the fact that the world is imperfect, but like
Mhm.
at least with the green bones, there are some type of rules to keep people in check. Like
Mhm.
it was almost, and this is something I noticed throughout a huge theme of the book, is the fact that like all of these people who come to KCON are like, you guys are barbaric. You guys are mafia groups. You guys are doing all of these things, these clean bladed duels, these da da da. Look at how barbaric you are. And then you go out into the outside and they're doing terrible stuff. They just do it with 1 or 2 degrees of separation. And they
Mhm.
pretend that that makes them less evil or less horrible than anyone else who would be willing to do it
Mhm.
themselves. And the Greenbones are sitting there being like, no, we take care of our own and we take care of it on an individual level because it's our responsibility to do that. We
Right.
can't just be removed from it because then we're just monsters.
Mhm.
And it's like a change in perspective, and it's like a very, everyone else like is in fact, most of them are westernized types of people, like
Mhm.
the Aspenians, who are like, oh, you guys are just horrible, you guys don't believe in Aisho. And they're like, no, we believe in Aisho, but like Aisho doesn't work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Your rules don't work 100% of the time. We're just honest about it to your faces, and you guys are trying to say you're this bigger than us, better than us nation, and you're just not. And so
Mhm.
I really loved that like Nico kind of brought focus in on that with his final
Sure.
discussion, where he was like, I learned that it's the powerful and the not powerful, and people are terrible everywhere. And so here
Mhm.
I know the rules and I know that there will be something followed to keep us all in check. And I know that I have the best power of like I have the best opportunity in this place to make that a
Mhm.
better place for everyone. And it's like,
Right.
that's really powerful. And I was like shocked when Shay was like, well, he sounds like I. And it's like, I don't know if he
I
sounds
didn't get
like
that vibe
I.
though. I think
Yeah.
I got more of the vibe like that you get in a lot of like superhero movies or like anything that has any kind of reluctant hero where they're like, you know what, I think that I don't want to be in this position, but who's the best person to be in a position of power? Maybe
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't want it.
Yeah.
So
And that's like, and that kind of shows that that's almost why Hilo was such a powerful person, because he never wanted to be Pillar, but
he
once
just
he
wanted to be Horn.
was, he was willing to put in the work to do it.
Hmm.
And then like Shay didn't want to be put in her position of power, but
Hmm.
then she was, and then she made it work, so Nico was also surrounded by people who didn't really want the lives they had, but then
Yeah.
made the best of it and like continued to live and didn't let it bring them down.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I did find Nico's character fascinating, especially his relationship with Gwen, because it is like the
Hmm.
most tumultuous, because it's like he loves
Hmm.
her so much, but you could tell that she's a good mom, but
Yeah.
she's not the most loving of mothers.
Sure. Well, she has a sense of duty to the clan above all,
Hmm.
even when it comes to, I would say even when it comes to her relationship with Hilo,
Yeah.
where, he's cheating on her and she's like, well, I kind of brought this on myself. I guess I'll just have to accept this because I kept secrets from him. And it's like,
Yeah.
No, no,
That's not how that goes. You're in
no.
pain, like you're
You
suffering.
are injured. You were actually helping the clan so much. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I would definitely say that she puts a sense of duty and loyalty to the clan above anything. That
mhm.
she's so selfless that she puts all of those things
And
first.
that's it's very hard when you're like I've known people in my life who are like super selfless, but they want everyone else to be equally selfless. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
people don't, not everyone has that in them.
Yeah.
Like you got to
Yeah.
be able to let it go and be like, well, I guess I am this selfless because that's who I am, and that's
Mhm.
who they are, and that's just how
Yeah.
it's gonna be. Like, and I don't think Gwen has that in her all the time, which is like, it's fascinating that she and Hilo found each other because they are weirdly perfect for one another. Where
Mhm.
Hilo is like, I believe in the clan because it's all I've ever known and it's perfect. And Gwen is like, I believe in the clan because I choose to believe it's perfect. Like, that's just the difference
Mhm.
between us. So yeah.
And I think honestly, for when a lot of her faith in the clan stems from her faith and trust in Hilo,
Hmm.
because we learn, from the time that she was young, she was trying to get closer to Hilo. She was slashing tires and stuff too, in order
Yeah.
to get Hilo closer to them and their family. She felt
Mhm.
such an immense pride and kinship with him even before they were romantically tied because of how kind he was and accepting of them when no one else was. So I think a lot of her loyalty to the clan is really stemming from how she sees Hilo
Yeah.
and how he has treated her
Yeah.
and her family. Can we talk
Uh,
about her family? Can we talk
yeah.
about
Let's talk about her
Mike Tar?
family. I do want to preface with like, this is a very complicated character because he did, in fact,
Hmm.
like brutally murder his fiance in a
Hmm.
domestic violent
A
like
domestic violence situation.
situation. And I do think that there's a little bit of context in this particular scenario. Not every scenario, but there was a particular thing in this scenario where they were both fighting each other, but he did take it too far and he did overpower her. And that is,
Hmm.
just the blatant fact. So I don't want us
Hmm.
to say that, like, oh my God, she was the best character. And like,
We're
we're
not
not condoning what
yeah,
he
we're not
did.
dismissing what he did and saying, oh, it's okay. That's
Right.
not it at all. But we're
But
saying that there are some nuances to this
yes,
situation with this character overall.
overall in this
That
fantasy
one,
novel.
yeah, in a fantasy novel, in that one situation where he did an extremely terrible thing, we obviously do not agree with that or condone it.
Right. And so I don't want that to be like, this was a fantasy novel that she built a very specific house, like Fonda Lee
Hmm.
did, for him to sit in. So
Hmm.
and that's a hard thing to do because a lot of
Yeah.
times like in books like this, like it's easy to be it's easy for people to read something like this and be like, oh, that's a situation in the real world. And it's like, no, it's not. It's
Hmm.
very different. Um, but Mike Tar, I, I loved seeing his ending because it was so emotional.
It's
Like
crushing.
it was crushing to see someone who had like resigned his life to like he was like
He
making
was
penance,
exiled.
really. He was exiled, but he was like doing his penance. Like he was like, I
Hmm.
live a small life. I do not see anyone.
Hmm.
I dream of the day I could be accepted back in the fold, but I know it will never happen. So he literally understood like what happened, and he
Hmm.
went into exile willingly, and he was doing his penance to try to make it up to the people he harmed and to make it
Hmm.
up to the lives that he took, and I think that that's a very interesting discussion when looking at like, he was a warrior, he did have PTSD, he did act in ways that were not him, him at any point in
Right.
time. And so it was very interesting to watch like a broken character at the end of this because we got to see the ramifications of being in this clan. Like
Hmm.
he went on missions that he loved doing, and he never thought about how it was affecting him mentally or emotionally until it was too late. And then he had to spend the rest of his life trying to have some semblance of just living back, and he could never do it. And then he had to go into death willingly, knowing that he could at least serve his pillar one last time. Like, that's heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. Like this section had me sobbing
Yeah.
with Tar. Uh, when we were first introduced to Tar in this book, because at this point, Tar has been exiled
Yeah.
for the previous actions. And I kind of just assumed that was the end with that character. And I was like, well, that's sad that that's how this character is written out, especially when this is another situation of another one of the Mike family being extremely, utterly loyal to Hilo and the clan as well. But Tar did unspeakable things, did not question them, was extremely effective, and like you said, did not think about how these things were affecting him. And so when we're introduced to Tar and Jade Legacy, when he's going to join up with this terrible, terrible person in Espenia, I was crushed because I was like, I really thought that you were going to be like kind of just out on the picture, like
Yeah.
living a decent life. And so I was like, no, please don't get involved with this guy. Please don't let something bad happen. Well, the way that Tar is able to gain the loyalty of, I can't even remember the character's name now. I can only
I just call
remember
him
the
the
slur.
bad, yeah,
I
the
can only
bad,
remember the slur. But
the bad guy. We'll call him the bad guy. He's the bad
yeah,
guy.
but uh yeah, he Tar gains the trust of him and then is moving up through the ranks and is going to be presented Jade at this ceremony. And then once he's presented Jade, is able to get rid of this bad character in a violent and shocking way. And the way that he basically just kind of accepts his fate and is totally okay with how he gives up all the information that maybe could have saved him and is just pretty much resigned to the fact that like nope, I did a bad thing and I am okay with it because I was able to help the clan and help Hilo, and that's what's important to me.
Right.
That was crushing. And then the way that he died was crushing as well. I had so many emotions. I'm even having like a really difficult time putting into words like how I felt about this scene or these scenes because it was just, and this is a character we've mentioned previously that we didn't really feel all that connected to because we were just
Yeah.
like, he's just the guy that you bring in if you need to assassinate somebody. And there wasn't a lot of thought given to it, but the way that this has been plotted out so perfectly is heartbreaking and so well done.
Well, and like I so admire Fondle for doing this because I also think like she took a character that you and I barely cared about, and in the final book
Made one of the
made
characters that
him
we cared about the most.
well, and also brought in like a lot of the issues with the Greenbone clan where it was like
Mhm.
everyone knew something was wrong with him, but he had served the clan for so long that you have to go about it a certain way. You can't just say like you've
And
gone
they
too
had
far.
conversations even
Hmm.
before the things that he had done when he was still when he was still the Pillar Man.
Exactly.
That they were like, well, maybe we need to talk to him, that kind of thing. And they're just like, no, he's fine. You know, this is how he is. This is how he deals with things. They knew he was having inappropriate conversations with the children and stuff like
Hmm.
that, that he was bringing up things that should not have been brought up to them. And
And it shows a ton of the flaws in like the clan system where it's like, well, you have these people who have to do these horrible things day in and day out. And then when that starts to affect them, you don't have a good way to pull them out. You just are like, well, we have to give him the respect because he is who he is and he's done what he's done. So we have to trust in him even though it's not the best circumstance for him. It showed some of the internalized sexism because everyone thought that like a wife would fix him and calm him down when like his sister is sitting there being like, no, something is wrong. You guys are not listening to him. You're not listening to me. Something is off and I don't like it. And like, it was just trusting that like a woman would fix him and then it didn't like
right.
it's a lot of the internalized sexism, it's a lot of internalized like believe in the power structure and like seeing that happen and seeing it fail him too and like
Mhm.
the woman he said he loved, like you're failing people by not protecting them in certain ways. And
Mhm.
like it was interesting to see how Fondly took that character and was able to show us all of those things. And then at the end of the day, even show us him at the end where he just wanted to make Hilo proud at the very end. And he believed in his system so much. It was heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. And in my mind, I see Tar as being one of the characters that you can credit with a lot of the change that was implemented
Mhm.
in the clan. And I think the other character obviously is Rue.
Yeah.
But and maybe Andon as well. Rue, Andon, and Tar, I think, are some of them that you can credit with bringing forth maybe the most change within the clan, even if they
Yeah.
didn't directly do it, but they were able to influence Hilo in order for this change to be made. And I think that that's also kind of an important thing to note, that Fond du Lis has made us realize that even if these characters are not in like the highest spot of privilege, that their stories were still extremely important because they were able to influence someone in
Mhm.
that highest role, and they were able to enact change. And so I think that's beautiful in itself.
And also, like, I don't know, it's also kind of a bummer because, like, once we get into Rue, it's like it's the teaching of like people in power sometimes only learn when they experience the power imbalance through someone they
Yeah.
love. Like, and so Hilo is such a flawed character. Obviously, we're talking about him later,
Mm-hmm.
but like, he only changed because like he didn't want to kill Tar, and he knew that he failed his brother in a way because he failed Tar. And then he was like, I don't want to be the violent person I was who just blindly accepted everything. I know I'm making a mess for myself. I know I will have to make reparations to this woman's family in a
Mm-hmm.
way that like will be invalidating to them. I could lose them, but like they have to understand that I just can't deal with this carnage anymore.
Yeah.
And then after Rue, it was like he pushed for all of these things, and I kept saying it's not my job. And now I've lost my son, and I would do anything to get him back. And all I can do is let him know that I'm a better man because of him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it stinks that sometimes change has to come from within and from with like other people you
Through those
interact with, where it's
circumstances.
like, can't you just like learn the lesson? But like, it's very human. And this is a deeply human and deeply flawed,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
I think that,
characters. So,
I mean, I can just relate to situations in my own life where I'm like, why can people not understand, that we need this in the world, or that we need to be more accepting of this, or that this doesn't happen? And it's because of my own experiences and people that
mhm.
I know and love that have shaped my experiences and made me think these things. But it is also, like you said, very frustrating that it has to be like that, where you have to explain to people, well, the reason I do this is because I have a loved one who has health issues or whatever,
Right.
like,
Like,
I know for me personally, like when we were in the peak of COVID, the worst of it, when cases were soaring,
yeah.
I I live in a very red area, so I was constantly having to explain to people why they would have to wear masks when they were around me, or why I would be wearing a mask. And it is kind of ridiculous that I would even have to explain, like, oh yeah, people in my family have health issues and I also do, so I'm going to be wearing a mask. Like,
Right.
you shouldn't have to bring up a personal story. People's, I don't know.
It's the
That was
whole
a
like,
tangent.
no, but it's the whole like, you don't owe anyone your story, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, some people
That's
need
what
to
it takes
hear
for some
it
people.
regardless.
Hmm.
Like, even though you don't owe it, they still
Hmm.
demand it in a way.
Right.
And that sucks because you're sitting there like, why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
Why me? You know? And I do think
Mhm.
that like Hilo learned a lot, but Hilo also got the grace to make a lot of mistakes. And like
Yes.
it's an interesting story because of that, because of Rue, and because,
What do we think
all of
about
them.
Tar? Anything else on Tar? Or I
Do you
wanted
have
to.
anything? Yeah, do
I
you have
don't have
anything
anything
else on
else
him?
on Tar.
Okay.
I meant, what do we think about Rue?
Oh, Rue. Um, I mean, Rue. I feel so bad because I feel like I didn't get to know Rue enough. Like,
Same. I think that this was a character that we moved quickly from him being the little brother who's like, you need to jump into your role as the next leader of the clan, Nico. And then all of a sudden he was an adult.
yeah,
And
and
it seemed like we kind of missed a lot. This is maybe the one scenario where the time jumps kind of got away from us, where the kids grew up too fast.
yeah. And that is unfortunate because I just don't feel like I got a handle on Rue besides like
Hmm.
he's a lot of the best and worst of Hilo.
Hmm.
And it was interesting. The most interesting parts when he was talking about like how much he wanted the privilege that his siblings got.
Yeah.
And he just wanted a taste of like all the things that quote unquote made them special. And the siblings were like, that's not what makes us special. We're special because we're human and we're great and we're enough. And then he's like, but you guys don't accept perks. You guys have to like you guys could get this so much easier. Why don't you just do that? I have to do this. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do this. And he like didn't always get it, which is frustrating.
I
But
think
it
it
also,
was an interesting point of view though that
yeah,
you get that point of view where Rue was like, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool that I'm going to take advantage of some of these things that people are going to like offer me this or that for free or give me this. That I'm going to take advantage of it because I usually don't get that." And like kind of wanting to have a little more
right.
given in certain circumstances, I guess. And how, like you said, his siblings would be like, no, you're kind of missing the point.
Like, come on, guy. You just gotta understand it's not all it's
Hmm.
cracked up to be. But I do like, I think it's always a shame when someone is more important by their by their legacy than they are as an actual character, because I do feel like Rue was more important as the legacy of
Yeah.
Rue. Which sucks because it's like, oh, he was the one kid who wasn't supposed to have that happen to him. And it is more heartbreaking because of it, where it's like, well, the other two would have to live up to their legacy. But
Hmm.
Rue had this like layered of protection to him where he wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to get a life. And like that was kind of when wasn't supposed to have a legacy, but when built a legacy. And that was what was amazing. And Rue just was killed in this horrible accident that robbed him of the opportunity to become who he might have been. And I think
Yeah.
that that's so hard. And like it's hard to know that like a child had that happen to them when they're supposed to be protected, when this
Hmm.
society is built up to keep them protected. Like,
Yeah.
that once they found out who he was, they weren't going to touch him. Once they found out, all these things, they were like, well, we can't act a certain way. It's Aisha. We can't kill him. We could put him in a hospital, but we can't do that. There were levels to it. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
I think also with Rue, and you mentioning when it's tragic from the standpoint of them being characters that he loved deeply, but he really wanted to just separate them from
Hmm.
the clan, and how they still were brought in and hurt terribly by
Yeah.
things within the clan. And I keep saying poetic, but it really is poetic that the people that he loved most, his son and his wife, would be who he would want to shield
Yeah.
from the clan and from anything Jade related because of Aisho, because they technically could have been removed from this and not really bothered. They were the ones who were terribly hurt and in Rue's case killed. And I find that so tragic and
Yeah.
at the same time sadly beautiful. But Rue is, I think, a really interesting character from the standpoint of the change that he brings about in Hilo. And obviously, at the time that he dies, he is in that stage where he's like the college kid who's having his eyes open to the world and all these new ideas and everything. And
Right.
he also has a unique perspective that he's able to bring to some of the people that he's interacting with. And it would have been interesting to kind of see that character grow and get a little older and see how his opinions change and everything.
Yeah.
But because I could even, see a world where Rue becomes the pillar of the clan. That would have
Right.
been really interesting. But I think that,
But
like you said,
no,
his
no
legacy.
world where his sister is the leader.
Oh no, I can't handle that. No, I'm not ready for that one. But I think, like you said, though, you put it perfectly, where Rue's legacy is what kind of defines him as a character in
Hmm.
this book and through the series, really, and the imprint that he leaves on Hilo and on Hilo's heart. So yeah, really, really great. Let's talk about Rue's sister, though. Rue and Nico's sister, Jaya.
Jaya. Oh my God, I hated her.
I didn't hate her, but she's definitely just like that. I mean, she is
She's young.
overcoming a
She is
lot in
young.
terms of like all the sexism that she has to deal with.
Yes.
It did tick me off a lot when it's like people don't even like duel her. Come on, she's
Right.
obviously able to hold her own. She can keep up in a fight. Like get
Yes.
over yourself. But so like those things do bother me. I
Right.
However, her attitude is annoying, but it's also one of those things where it's like, okay, well, a 19 or 20-year-old who has to deal with like tons of sexism all the time and is like really
Right.
wanting to prove themselves in a very male dominated field because she's in the midst of like all the fists and the fingers and wants to become the horn someday. So she's in literally like the battleground section
Right.
of the clan. So she has to deal with a lot of sexism and a lot of challenges that the other siblings do not have to deal with. However, she does come off as really grating
Right.
when it's just like she always like so willing to start a fight and just like angry all the time. And when
Right.
she came into the uh at the end of the book when she comes into Hilo's funeral or not to the funeral but into Hilo's home and Hilo's already passed and how she's ready to fight people and everything, it came off as a little too much to me. I'm like, please just stop. I get it that you're upset and that
Yeah.
this is your reaction, but she is maybe a character that for me just doesn't fit my vibe of characters that I usually like because I'm not about the characters that are like quick to
I'm
fight
coming in on all
people and
cylinders and I'm here to beat you up. Yeah. I just
yeah.
maybe hate's a strong word for her, but I never get someone who's sitting there being like, because she seemed to get it. Like she seems smart enough to be like, no one will
She's
find
very
me.
smart.
I need to do this all on my own. But
And
then
she
in the
takes
same,
advantage of like she takes advantage of the way that people treat her. Like she knows like, oh, I can act a certain way and I'm going to
right.
use this as a
And the thing
like a
is
ploy.
I loved her road trip. Like the road trip was
Oh yeah.
hilarious and amazing, and I was glad to have it. But like I just didn't get how obtuse she would be when it came to like all the women around her, where she would be like, "Oh, mom and Shay vomit," and it's just like, okay, so you're someone who understands that the world treats women differently, but then like you have to put yourself above what came before you, and like I guess it's just being young and youthful, but like
And
to be like,
also like anybody that age is going to be like, my mom and aunt are stupid. Like
they're
they don't
so
know anything.
stupid. Like how,
So
yeah, it's
I
just like,
get it, but it
yeah,
is grating. And
yeah,
I guess from my standpoint, like you mentioned how she complains about her mom and Shay, and she does because she
right,
basically does call them lame and that she doesn't want to work with them. And it's really hard to hear that when you're attached to Shay and Wen because they have really been dynamic characters who are so capable and accomplished in what they do. So
right,
it's kind of annoying to see a young woman who, even though she's going through a lot and facing like a really uphill battle, it's still
hmm
annoying to see another woman like kind of not necessarily putting down other women, but like not acknowledging that there's other really awesome women 2 feet away from you
right.
and you can't see it.
And I guess that's it. Like she just wants to only identify, like, and that's
She's
the thing is
very
like,
much in her own
yeah, like she's in her own
POV
space and she just wants to be like powerful
as a
and she wants
teenager would.
Hilo's approval. And like, so I think that that's hard where it's like also Rue didn't get the grace to grow up. Jaya didn't get the
Mm-hmm.
grace to grow up outside of the
Mm-hmm.
pages of this novel. So
Yeah.
her dad did die in her early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to be the most reasonable human being. I
Yeah.
was a terrible human being in my 20s too. So, you
Yeah.
know, I think it's interesting though, taking Jaya and Tia is the Shay's daughter. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's interesting seeing them because they're the youngest and they get to be the most feeling of the children. Like Nico was taught to be like, this is about you. You must do right. You must do this.
Rue was like,
And
you're
then
not involved.
you stay away, have a life, have the best life because
Go
none
as
of the
far
other
as you
kids
can.
can do. Yeah, like get out of here. Do anything you want that's not near us. Like, and so Jaya and Tia are the ones who get to have the most emotions, which is like also a very like youngest trait thing
And
where it's like,
honestly, the most flexibility.
mm-hmm. Because like Jaya gets to go and leave the house where like
Mm-hmm.
Nico would have always had to be close to home. Rue had to go to college nearby. Like there's certain things of like, well, this is what you're going to do next. This is what you're going to do next. And with Jaya was like, I want the opportunity to go on my own. And they're like, okay, you get to try that because we have the other two set up, or, we have everything that we need right now. So you can go do what you need to do. And she gets that independence, and Tia gets that independence in like a different way where she's like, I don't want anything to do with this
Yeah,
clan.
she's
This is
mortified by what
horrible.
they do.
You people are horrible. And everyone's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, like, we don't want the 6-year-old judging us. So can we send her to public school?
Yeah.
And so it's fun to see, because I do think that like Fonda Lee does an excellent job of showing how generations shift. And like you
Hmm.
can have a very strict generation with lots of trauma. And then you have the parents who want better lives for their children than what they
Yeah.
received. And then you have the parents resenting the children a little bit when they're like, oh, okay, you didn't like your life. I will go find a new one. And then they're like, well, what was wrong with my life? And it's like, well, you taught them that you should step away. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and so it is interesting to see them be like, well, I want Tia and Jaya to have this like these wonderful lives, outside of us. I don't want them to just exist for us, but also why aren't they better behaved? And it's like, well, because you didn't teach them to be better behaved and
I
like
think with
fearful of
Jaya
you.
too, she is uh, given a little more room just because they're so focused on Nico and Rue that they're kind of like, okay, yeah, you're over there. We know that you're
Right.
trained. People aren't going to mess with you because of sexism.
Yeah.
And we're not too worried
And
about you getting into
also,
fights. And
you will
people are
never
worried
be in
that,
a place of power because you're a woman. So like it doesn't
yeah.
really matter. Like if you're
So
gonna be a
people aren't
whore,
going to come for
maybe,
you.
I don't
You're
know.
not high enough up on the chain. So you're fine. And so they kind of like brush off a lot of her and her antics, which is also frustrating, honestly, where it's like, please take her seriously a little more. And I do think we get a little bit of her true character, that she truly is a good person and wants to defend those who can't defend themselves. We get that scenario with her friend who was almost assaulted and how she
Right.
sticks up for them. I think that was a really good portrayal of like what kind of person she is. And
Yes.
really, it's one of the few portrayals of her that we get, like of her true character. But
Right.
I think it was a good way to show that she does not necessarily inherit, but I guess inherit some of Hilo's loyalty to his friends.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good scene, even though like they were quick to jump in and be like, dumb girl, you're so quick to anger.
Well, that's the thing is like so many times she's sitting there being like, I just want to do my job. I just want to do what I'm good at. And they keep being like, but you're a woman. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah. And like, it is frustrating to see. It's kind of like they say that there's a theory that whenever there's progress, it's immediately followed by a lot of regression, because people are like, well, the world isn't sexist anymore. We have a female prime minister, and then there's a wave of sexism that happens because it
Mhm.
seems more acceptable to have backlash. And so it's like Aitmata got Pillar, and everyone was like, okay, well, then we're going to be the worst sexist pieces of trash ever. And we're going to say women aren't as good as men all the time.
Yeah.
And Jaya did have to struggle with that. And Shay had to struggle with that. And then you have Aitmata who's like, I'm just going to murder everyone who I don't like because that
Yeah.
is how
Why
I
not?
will stay in power. Like, yeah, it's very interesting. So I do feel for Jaya. I don't hate her. I
Mhm.
just hate some of her
I know you don't hate her.
characteristics.
I think it's more just that we have a frustration with her, and
Mhm.
it it's also coming from a place of like us just being like, this is an immature person, and we have also been immature women at
Yeah.
one point in our lives that other people were probably very frustrated with. So can relate. But what do you think of Tia and Woon? Let's talk about them as a group because I don't feel like there's that much to talk about with them besides what you already brought up.
I mean, have you ever had a white piece of bread that like sat out all night and you're like, well, I guess I was making toast anyway. This is dry enough.
Okay. No.
Wound is like stale bread. I don't understand the appeal. I guess I'm
I'm not a
glad
fan of Woon and being the
yeah.
relationship that ended up.
No, it's
But
just
at
it's
this
not
point, we're
good.
too late.
Yeah. Like Shay can't possibly have another boyfriend that she can screw over a million times in a
Yeah,
million different ways. Like
we can't
it,
do this for decades.
I
But
mean, I
I think
mostly just
Woon is
felt
a good
bad for his
dad.
wife. Like
Yeah,
his wife,
his
that poor woman. Oh
Hmm.
God, that poor woman.
Was that in this book though? I thought that was the last book.
I thought it was this book. It's
Oh,
this
was it?
book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It all still happened in
Uh,
this book.
it all still happened in
Yeah.
this book
A lot happens in this
because
book.
yeah, I think it was at least. I forget. Was it the last book? I don't know. They all blend together. Um, but if it was in the last book, just remember that we felt bad for
I know
Boone's
there
wife.
was a pregnancy in this book and
Yeah.
that Shay was pregnant when she traveled and
Yeah.
yeah.
But I forget. I just remember that like Woon rushed to her side after
Mhm,
the six hands people came.
mhm.
And I thought that that happened at the beginning of this book, but I could be wrong. Um, because it could have been the last book. Who knows? All
It
the
definitely
things
could
run
have been this
together.
book, but I think
Good
the
for
only thing that
Woon
I'm
for
like
being a
take
good dad.
yeah,
Like
Woon is a good dad and extremely supportive of his wife and daughter, and sometimes that's all we can ask, I guess.
you know,
Like,
I love a guy who wants to be a stay-at-home dad. You be a
yeah,
stay-at-home dad. Go for
like
you.
he loves them, he's good to them. Okay.
I just
Tia, I thought was like you said a unique way to carry out this line
hmm
where she is going to public school. She's not gonna wear jade. And I thought that was a unique way to bring Shay's family full circle, where Shay also ends up not using jade, and then her daughter is not gonna be a jade user, even though she would have been capable. So I thought that was a unique way to go with that. But I don't really have a lot to say there, just like thought that was kind of interesting to take the story that way.
Yeah, I know. It was really interesting. I liked Tia as a character. I thought that, that was a very interesting character to have.
Mhm.
Again, she just kind of like it, it's the whole
It's a 6-year-old. There's not
it's
that
a
much to
6 year old.
say.
She likes dolls. She likes her
Hmm.
school. Cool beans.
Yeah.
Woon is there. He's just Ken.
Yeah.
And I'm just Woon. Anywhere else I'd make a swoon. Yeah. Um
That I'm Just Ken song is on my Spotify most played list. Like I've listened to that an embarrassing amount of times.
I love it. Um but yeah, so
Let's talk about Andon because I think we're getting down to the wire here, right?
yeah, we are. And I also want to talk a little bit about themes, but like, yeah,
Mhm.
and we could mostly talk about it when we get to
Because
I
we got
feel because she has like overarching
Andon,
themes
I,
to her.
Shay, and Hilo. I
Yeah,
think are probably our last,
heavy
unless we want to talk
hitters.
about Jim Sunto.
I mean, Jim Sunto is Mr. Religious Man. He is
Hmm.
Mr. I am better than you because I was colonized.
Hmm.
Oh, you're actually intelligent people. I just assumed you were idiots because my colony like told me you were stupid. Like he's just
Hmm.
a failure of his upbringing, in my opinion, where it's like
Sure.
westernization is the superior force.
Hmm.
And he undermined everyone because he believed that.
Yeah.
And the
Drink the Kool-Aid.
fact and like I do think it's interesting because again it leads back to the whole like westernized as the superior being or whatever, that like he does so many bad things but then he like turns around and he calls Hilo like all the worst names you could possibly say, and when Hilo's like you're literally just like me, uh he can't take it. So that is my small rant on Mr. Jim Sunto, that he's just yeah kind of the worst.
Hmm.
And it also just shows, I don't know, it shows how bad things can get because like obviously like Hilo's right when he's like they will hang you out to dry immediately because you look like us, and it's just it teaches people about like internalized racism does not
Hmm.
help you in the long run because people devalue you just as much as you devalue others. So
Yeah. I think that actually kind of ties up what I was thinking perfectly because Jim Sunto is someone who thinks that he's kind of doing things for the greater good,
mm-hmm,
but it turns a blind eye to a lot of things that are happening and maybe is unaware of a lot of things that are happening and maybe just a little too in like not La La Land, but in his own little safety bubble that he
mm-hmm,
thinks that people are always going to have him in a role where they respect and trust him. But it's like you said, that he has built up enough internalized racism that
mm-hmm.
it's not going to end well for him.
Right. Um, yeah, but we can talk about Andon. What are your thoughts on Andon?
Andon is one of the characters that we kind of follow throughout the
Mm-hmm.
story. Be Andon and Barrow, they're kind of like our, not necessarily our narrators, but they're the ones that are pushing us along
Right.
through all the decades, basically, because
Yeah.
whenever we're jumping into a new like time, it seems like we're either in Andon's point of view or Barrow's like, oh, I'm back and still terrible. But Andon, I think, is kind of like the moral compass. He's the one that has to, he's the Jiminy Cricket. He has to
Right.
bring everybody back. He has to get Hilo to recognize that he needs to support his son. He is the one that's like, I think I'm going to run for office and because I have the moral backbone and I need to. And
But at
I,
the end of the day, he didn't date who we thought he was going to date. No.
well, you know
Sorry.
what? That was a
Yeah.
surprise because I actually kind of thought like all the mentions of like Lot being so handsome and
Mm-hmm.
everything. I was like, well, that's probably going to happen in the last book. Kudos Fonda Lee for not doing that because that was a
Right.
major loop that we were thrown for. But yeah, I think Andon is interesting in his relationship that he ends up in with someone who wants nothing to do with the clan. And
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that. I thought that was a great way to kind of tie that together because Andon thinks that he has nothing to do with the clan and thinks that he's not involved, but he's the most involved all the time.
Right.
Whenever they need someone, Andon's there. Whenever they need help with something, Andon's there. He's always involved. And even though he acts like he doesn't care and isn't going to do something, like he's the one that was helping Shay with Aitmata. He's the one that helped when they needed to get rid of Gaunt Ash. He's the one that helped in Espina. He's a linchpin to all of these different things that happened.
Right.
And he's critical to all of their clan activities. So he can't really act like he is not involved or doesn't want to be because he definitely does.
Right.
But so that does make it a little bit nerve wracking when he's going to become a politician. But I mean, because I don't know if they should be mixing gold with jade. But
I mean it seemed like a bad idea, but you
yeah.
know.
But I do like that he ends up with an Abukai person
Mm-hmm.
because I think that having that separation for him in some way, even if it's just his romantic life,
Right.
is necessary for Andon.
Yes. I think Annon's an interesting character because I really thought he was going to be Pillar at the end. I called it wrong
Yeah.
because he was Mr. Most involved. Um, but I
Well, I think
just,
you probably thought that way because he was always the one that's like, I am a
yeah.
reluctant hero.
Well, also, I thought it was weird in the final book that like all of these people who have like lifelong friendships and connections to, or like to every single other character was like, oh, hi, Andon. It's like, it's Tommy Wiseau in the room. Oh, hi, Mark. Like, what are you doing here? Like, you're just sitting there, like, why is Andon talking to you right now? Why does Andon care? Why is he
Yeah,
here? Get out of here, Andon. But like, he's the one who sees Mike Tar at the end. He's the one pushing to like get rid of the bad guy. He's the one who's like flying different places and being like, tell me everything you know about the mountain. And it's just like,
exactly.
why
He's
is
the
Andon
most
here?
involved.
And so that's why I was like, well, he has to be Pillar at the end of this because, and then he's like, no, I think I'm just going to be president. And it's like, but I didn't know that was an option for you. I thought you were just going to be Mr. Pillarman. But like, he was a very interesting character in this final book. Again, he's the character I feel like we were served the least amount of
Mhm.
growth, even though he also had the most amount of growth. It was a very weird character. I just felt the most unsettled with Andon at the end, where I'm like, I just don't know what I learned from you. Because all I learned was like everyone else was right from the first book. If you just were fine for a little bit longer, you probably could have used Jade. Like
Mhm.
everyone in the first book was like, look, it was just a really bad experience with Jade. We totally get it, but like you'll be ready again. And he was like, absolutely not. And then he's like, well, you know, I put on a lot of jade for medicine. I put on a lot of jade for this. I am very talented with it. It's like, oh, so everyone else was right and you
Yeah.
were just some dumb kid. Okay. Um, but I do appreciate that like he said no to being Nico's pillar man because I do like
Hmm.
that Andon is like, look, I've made a pretty good spot for myself. I control everyone. Like, why would I give that up to be under you, Nico? Like, no, thank you. So
I also
maybe
think it's unique too because like maybe he is trying to put a little more separation in there, you
Mhm.
know.
And I do love that he like got his own voice. I think that that's the best
Hmm.
part of this, where he
Yeah.
got to be like, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a part of the clan. I don't think I have to be. And like, we're not going to do this right now. And he also got to stand up to Hilo. He got to tell Hilo where he made mistakes. And he got to be, I do think that like Andon is probably, we saw the least amount of growth because he got to do a lot of it off screen because he also got time to
Hmm.
grow. So when he came into situations, it was always like from a very good, like, I've processed all these emotions. I've done what I needed to do. I know what's going on with Nico. Let's support him, guys. And I am glad that he ended up with an Abuke man because I
Hmm.
just think that that's a fascinating thing. And I think that it
Hmm.
was wonderful to show different parts of the community of KCON. And I just thought it was excellent storytelling from Fonda Lee. And I really thought that him having an outside perspective and an outside resource when he didn't know if he wanted to be part of the clan all of his life, that was
Hmm.
very helpful for him. But
Yeah,
that's all I have on it. Yeah.
I think you're right when you say that probably the most interesting part of Andon is that he is the one that kind of is able to have his own voice and say like, no, I don't want to be involved in this. When he
Hmm.
was brought in kind of like without being asked into
Right.
this family. And I think that's nice that he ends up being able to say like what he wants for himself in his life and how involved he wants to be in the clan
Hmm.
instead of just being forced into it or feeling obligated to do things for the clan. So that's a nice touch. I will say
Right.
though, I'm just thinking about it and I was like, I kind of wish we would have got a little more of Andon's like backstory.
Right.
That
Agreed.
that would have been interesting, but honestly, no more to say on Andon.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. How do we feel about Ite?
Um,
Oh, wait, do you want to do Shay first and then I, or do you want to do
no, we
Ite
can
and
do
then
I.
Shay? Okay.
Uh, so Aitmata was a character that I think personally I found her to be a really effective villain because she often made points that I was like, she's right. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best kind of villain because if you have a villain that's just like outwardly just like, twisting their mustache and saying
Yeah.
just horrendous things, it's really hard to make them appealing or effective
Right.
because you're just going to be rooting against them. But when you have a character like this who is working against a lot and defying odds and still making a lot of good points and still being really smart and effective, it it makes it harder to even put her into that villain category.
Right.
And there's so many times, I mean, because we can say, that the No Peak clan are the heroes of this, but they do so many terrible things. If you were in the Mountain Clan, this would not be a story of heroes. This would be a story of villains.
Right.
And so it's hard to look at Aitmata and be like, yeah, she should have gotten worse, or she should have had this happen to her, or things that she said or did were terrible because they've all done terrible things in these books. They've all made bad choices. They've all done a lot of bad things. I would say that Ait has a very different sense of loyalty. Her loyalty is to herself
Right.
versus the No Peak clan, who is a family
Right.
and they are very devoted to their family. And I think that to me is the major difference because even once I has kind of been put in a place where she is not really wanted to be the pillar by the majority of her clan, she still kind of fights back against that and
She's like,
rebels
they'll come
against
around.
the person that she names as her heir. And it's
Right.
that is traitorous and
Hmm.
not great. And so I think that to me was kind of the moment where I'm like, this is where me as a reader, I'm turning on her because like I said, for all this time, I was like, this is a really effective villain. This is a really effective character because she makes you question things. But when you get into that moment where you see that she's only loyal to herself is when she becomes the true villain.
Yeah.
And I think the ending, I had mentioned in the first half of this how I did not like an ambiguous ending in a book. But I think with this, it's probably the best way to end it for her because she wanted the satisfaction of somebody, you know, killing her or
Yeah.
somebody to do this or that. She was expecting it and thought that she would go out in a blaze of glory type thing, that
Right.
she would be punished for doing something terrible if she was gonna be killed. And the way that they're just kind of taking that away from her, just pulling the rug out from under her and saying, nope, you just have to go be exiled and die an old woman with no jade. And that I think really kind of defangs her. And
Yeah.
she hates it. And that's probably the worst possible ending she could get for her.
So I did forget that we also forgot Barrow, and I think that that is poignant to be like, oh, we forgot Barrow, and you do kind of forget Ite in this. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Ite in the former books was this great, grand, like, oh, she's sitting over us and she's trying to get to us and she's trying to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the last book, I even had a little bit of like Ite fatigue where I was like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you talking to Shay? You seem to be almost a relic in these books. And in this book, we get to see Ite become a relic. We get to see where
Mm-hmm.
she is not going to charge into the new because she can't move. She thinks that she knows best and she will move Kakon into the country that it will be. And that means overall power to her. And she doesn't seem to understand, like, she never grew or never understood or never tried to become better. It was just like, I know what's best for us. I will do what is best for us. And it's making money and gaining power. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't seem to understand that like having outside opinions is helpful. She's just surrounded by yes men and
Mm-hmm.
she's surrounded by people who will keep her in power because they fear her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to watch that crumble beneath her because she does just lose so much traction.
Yeah.
Where a big part of Hilo's problem was his lack of growth in the prior books, where anytime he had to grow, he fought it so hard and he reacted so poorly. But he did come back and he did listen to people and he did move past it. And that's like fascinating to see because you're seeing how two different characters who are so similar can really let the world affect them in a very unique way. So watching I have that finale where she had to go down swinging, she was trying to murder all the people as if like creating that vacuum was enough to keep them in power when it's like, well, I like literally that happened once. It happened with the bombing
Mm-hmm.
and Kakon still withstood. So why were you just going through the old classics of how to get power? It just doesn't work anymore. And that's like, and she just couldn't hear her because Shay even said, look, this is not the world it once was. We can't just consume one another. Like it's impossible at this point with how the world works. And she just couldn't hear it. She was like, no, I am right. I need to take them all
Yeah.
out. I need to maintain power. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Completely agree.
So
Barrow, I think, doesn't even deserve being talked about. He's a shitty character
I don't
that
think I
I
need to
hated.
discuss
I
him.
don't actually he's not a shitty character. He's not. He is a character that is flawed. They're all flawed characters, but he's a character that is deeply flawed, but comes from a place where he recognizes that there needs to be change made, that he at times in his life has been in a position to make change, but he always goes about things the wrong way. He's always looking out for himself. And I think that's maybe one of the things with the villains in this series, that they're so self-centered, which even if they
Yeah.
make good points and have good intentions, like Barrow also we've said throughout our discussions, like, oh yeah, Barrow made a good point. Like, do we agree with Barrow? Like there's times where you do, but I think what holds back Barrow and what holds back Aitmata is literally the selfishness of those characters and how they cannot see beyond their own nose, and
Hmm.
they can't move forward because even if they have good points and good intentions, they're not willing to follow through on them because they are only concerned how it will serve them.
I do think like I definitely want to talk about Barrow in the next like in our series wrap up, if you will.
We can talk about him
Just
now.
yeah.
I'm just kidding,
No, no,
but
no,
we
no, no, no. But I do want to talk about him because I think it's fascinating and like I think it's more of an overarching conversation. But just the fact that Barrow is a perfect character for this book because he has all the right points, but he is also a sociopath, so he goes about everything wrong. Like
yeah.
it's like, oh, and another character, he's a downtrodden man who wants to take down the people around him, but it's all coming from an area of selfishness. It's
Yeah.
not coming from a greater good. And like that's why he usually survives because he's willy-nilly and he doesn't actually care about anything. He has no
Mhm.
principles. And so it's just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm over here this week. I guess I'm over here this week. And it's like, okay, Beryl, whatever you want to do is the right thing for you. Um, but I do love that his ending was so anticlimactic, where it's just like,
Yeah.
I will never think about you again. You will think about me forever. You do not get an ending. You are not my ending. And I'm like, oh God, yes. Barrow is not our ending, even though he
Mhm.
probably was in that cap. Uh,
Which I kind of liked how it was wrapped up with Nico. I would have even left it there with
mhm.
Barrow, but I think it was interesting to just take it even a step further for Barrow to continue to try to explain how important he was, and for
Yeah,
somebody to just be like, whatever, don't care.
everyone has a story. Come on, man.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Well, so Shay, what did you think of
Shay.
Shay?
So Shay in this book, so if I'm remembering right, so she was pregnant in this book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she's going through a lot, honestly, because she has complicated feelings when it comes to pregnancy from previous books and with her relationships and her relationship with Wound and everything. So that is a unique story to read about in this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think her kidnapping and everything that happens with the overexposure to Jade and the itches and how she decides to never wear Jade again
Yeah.
is again tying up a really nice circle for this character. She comes full circle from coming back to Kikon not using Jade and ending up coming back to Kikon not using Jade.
Yeah.
And the way that it has happened, though, is really tragic, and that I wish it didn't happen that way, but I also think it makes a lot of sense with this character that she would feel so deeply about this
Yeah.
and that it would affect her more so than it would other characters because they mention, like you could probably wear Jade again. It's probably literally just you're having like psychosomatic symptoms. And for her to be like, I just really can't do it. I don't think I'll ever be the same, I think is really reflective of her character because other characters would not question things the way that she does or think as
Right.
deeply about them. And I think just overall, I really like Shay as a character. Terrible with relationships, bad at choosing men, but she is a great character. And I've loved seeing how, even in this book, she's kind of accepted that her role changes and that she can be a mom and a working mom and that she has, guilt about being a working mom and how she is worried about like missing parts of her daughter's life, but how she still wants to work and she wants to be involved in things that the clan is doing. She grows to have such a deep sense of loyalty to the clan and advancing their different business operations in different parts of the world. And
Mhm.
she really just grows into her own as the weatherman and is so effective at her job. And it's so nice to see a character written that really kind of highlights what it's like to be a woman in any kind of
Mhm.
job. And so I really liked that because she deals with sexism. She deals with the guilt of balancing a relationship and a family, and also
Mhm.
people questioning how she is going to be as a leader and proving that she is really good at it and also at the same time
Yeah.
struggling at times and having to be compared to other women in power, like she is constantly compared to Aitmata and forging her own path and also bringing in other women that she trusts and building strong relationships with other women like Wen because they have an excellent relationship. So there
Yeah.
we have two women that are building each other up. I think there's so many great things about Shay, and I really love that character. And I I also love that she's able to stay on and mentor Nico,
Yeah.
and that she's going to be a mentor for him that he needs when Hilo didn't really have that when
Right.
he became Pillar. And I think it's great that she'll be there and that she has so much experience and that we have someone who is leading a reluctant Pillar who is really reluctant to come into the clan themselves.
Right. I do love Shay. I think she's such a dynamic character. And like the fact that she had all the experiences, like in the last book, she decided that having a child at a certain moment wasn't right for her. And she was able to
Mhm.
step away from that. And she was able, I hate her choice in men, but I like that she was able to make mistakes with men. I
Yes.
don't think we have enough books where women make mistakes and
Mhm.
could love other people before they find the man they want
And
to be
also
with for the rest of their life.
question like, oh, because like in this book she even questions like, oh, I think I should have like ended up with Morrow, like
Mm-hmm.
we were probably a better fit. And it's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. You're absolutely right that we don't get enough books where women kind of make mistakes and maybe question who they're with and okay, is this the right person?
Yeah. And I think like she has those moments with Boone where she was like, man, I'm jealous he gets to step away, but also I know that like I would be miserable. So like this is just what it had to be.
Mhm.
And like I do love that she got to stay in her job. She got to be like kind of just a good mom who wasn't
Mhm.
always the best mom. And I also think that that's not shown enough where it's like, oh, Tia and Woon have a good relationship. They are super close, but Tia also loves her mom. She's not running away from her mom
Yeah,
being like, "You're the worst mommy in the world." There's never a moment where
right.
like Shay Shay wonders if she fails as a mother, but Shay doesn't usually fail as a mother on the page. She's just a good mom who also happens to be in a very high, powerful, active job. She gets to make mistakes with the loves of her life, and like she even talks about like, wow, I was with Gerald for like 5 years and people pretend like I just had this random love affair and ran away from it. It was like a very prolonged relationship. Like, or
Right.
it wasn't like 5 years, but it was like 3 years. It was a significant amount of time to be like, yeah, I dated a man for a significant amount of time and no one and everyone pretends like it was just this willy-nilly like
It was
flirtation.
just a fling.
Yeah, and she was like, because no one took it seriously. But like like Shay is the one who has the most complicated, the most relationships, and like
Mhm.
is what she actually wants. So like, yes, she likes milk toast men who barely should be there, but like at least she knows that about herself. And like sometimes high-powered women don't want a complex person. Like
Right.
Wound's not complicated. He is very in your face about how much he adores her. And if you have a very high-stress job, maybe you just want to be adored. And so like, yes, we make fun of Wound. Yes, we make fun of Shay, but like I do appreciate that she got to have the ending that Shay wanted. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make because, like you said, we don't get a lot of books where the woman is able to like kind of falter when it comes to relationships.
Mhm.
And it's usually like, oh no, she's found the perfect match. Or
Yeah.
it's like they have one miscommunication, but now they're back together. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
that's not how
like
the world works.
and like yeah, it's just Shay like and again like Shay's an interesting character because she and Moon think that they are the most like we are the principles and the bastion of goodness. And it's like, no, you guys kind of suck. Like, you just do. And that's okay. You should get to suck together sometimes because you don't have to be perfect. But like, Shay mishandles like Boone's wife, where she's like, listen, do you need any help? And the wife was like, fuck off and die. Like, how dare you? I never want to think about you again. And it's like, yeah, Shay, like, stop trying to be the good one in the scenario. You're not the good
You're the
one.
you're the bad
You're
guy.
the bad guy. And like that's okay. Sometimes people are bad guys, but like just don't do this.
Mhm.
So I do like that Shay got to make mistakes. I do like that Shay is a very flawed character. And I like that she like still comes out of it well. And like sometimes she flounders at work, but she's willing to let others take the lead and then give them
Mhm.
credit where she's like, oh gosh, I should have figured out Aitmata's devious plan. And he was just kind of like, well, you didn't, and here we are. So what are you gonna do? Like, I do
Yeah.
like watching her kind of be hit, but she never lets it like totally break her.
Hmm. So
All
all
right.
that's left is Hilo.
I never thought I'd love Hilo this much in the last book when I was like, I don't know. He's driving me crazy.
Hilo has come on such a journey, and I I think we're both hesitant to be like, this is my favorite character,
Yeah.
but I think this is easily one of my favorite written characters. I wouldn't say that
Yes.
he's a favorite character, but the way that this character is written is so brilliant. And
Mhm.
the growth that he has throughout this series and how we get to watch him change and develop into his
Mhm.
role. I was so convinced from the first book that he was just going to die by the second book and that we'd have a new pillar in the third. I was convinced that that was the way it was going to go. I had no idea that we were going to go on this beautiful journey with this
Mhm.
character and see the ups and downs of his life and the complex ways that the clan affected him and how he was so loyal to those around him and would defend the clan above anything. And I it's just so impressive and how certain parts of his character, stay pretty like similar
Yeah.
throughout. Like he's always a people person. He's always someone that people can relate to and he finds, things to kind of bring people to him. He's very much a people person that everyone adores. But at the same time, he has this anger and this ferocity to him that kind of mellows out as we
Right.
go along. And like you said, in this book, especially, we see there are tragic things that happen to him that shape the way he
Mhm.
feels about things. But I don't mind it because sometimes people in privilege have to have these things happen to them and in order for change to be enacted. And I think that it was so great to see that Hilo did work to change a lot of things for the clan, that they have doctors at duels now and they have to
Yeah.
have witnesses and they have to have time to consider things, and
Mhm.
that Hilo started charities to help Stone Eyes, and that Hilo was became more interested in like giving money to different organizations like the arts and stuff like that, and he learned to accept that his wife would have a role within their clan. And I think that was maybe one of the harder things for him to do.
Right.
And I think their relationship was really neat to see play out.
Yeah.
But Hilo was such a wonderful character to read. And
Yeah.
I became so attached to him as a reader, just seeing his journey as a father and a husband and as a leader and someone that people trust. And I cannot say enough great things about the way that this character was written.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. He's just like one of the best written characters I've ever seen. And I think it's because we get so much time with him. Like I said at the beginning, I think sometimes when you're stuck in a very specific timeline with someone, you only get to spend 10 years of their life with
Mm-hmm.
them. If you think about it, that's Hilo from ages 27 when we start the book to 37. So when he's becoming a father and like
Mm-hmm.
raising kids and like during that time he gets like a good stride, but it doesn't show the growth you can have as an adult when you realize like that the world is bigger than yourself and that you want to protect those around you so badly and that you can make mistakes and you might not want to, and you might have to protect them in ways you could never imagine. And I just think that like Hilo learned from his mistakes and he moved past them and he had the support he needed to help him learn.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of his roughest things about him was like his privilege of not being able to check it. But later on in life, he just kept experiencing because he listened to the people around him, all the moments where he failed them because of his
Mm-hmm.
privilege. And he just kind of took it and was like, okay, well, I want to become better than that. And I also think like it's amazing because a lot of these books showed like our only other person who aged old enough to see them were Aitmata and the Torch of Kakon. And they were both like curmudgeonly people who only trusted themselves and wanted power above all else and respect above all else, where Hilo got the same length of time a lot of the I mean, it was a shortened life, but Hilo got a very extended life for a pillar. And he
You mean like the time that he was the pillar?
yeah, the time that he was the
Okay.
pillar. Because I was
Yes.
thinking in context of Lan, where Lan was like a short time where people like didn't really remember Lan after, after a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of time. Like they at
Yeah.
the beginning, they're like, well, Lan's so much better than Hilo. But Hilo he was so long in the pillar like role that he was beloved by the end of it because he
Yeah.
got time to grow with the role and make it his own.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
think that that's fascinating.
oh, absolutely. And just the way that he changed people's minds and
Hmm.
also changed the role itself and the clan itself is his legacy.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people could read the title Jade Legacy and say that it's, about like Nico taking over, that Nico and the next generation are the legacy. But honestly, to me, like this is just, it's all tied into Hilo. This is Hilo's
Right.
series. This is Hilo's book. This is a story about Hilo leaving a legacy for the No Peak clan and
Hmm.
how beautifully he does that, whether you consider the legacy to be the way that he taught his children or the things that he did to improve the clan. It's
Hmm.
Hilo's legacy. And
Yeah.
he died, like you said, beloved by everyone.
Hmm.
And that's a prediction that I was wrong about because I was in book one, I was assuming that he would go out like literally just raging out about something, that there was going to be something that happened. And he gets more of a quiet end where he protects people that he loves and
Right.
is able to share his final moments with Wen and have people cheering for him.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, with that, should we end our discussion on this particular
Yep.
book?
We'll
Well,
be back
guys,
next week to talk about the whole thing.
the whole thing. And I feel like we've talked so much about it. I cannot wait to talk about the series as a whole on
Yeah.
our final thoughts. So everyone, please join us next week to do our season finale, but not the series finale, because that will become the week after on our 100th episode. We will be
Yes.
having Fonda Lee back on the pod to discuss this book series. We have had her on for her novella, and we warned her that we would be begging her to come back on for this. And so
Mm-hmm.
she has been so kind to come back and join us to discuss how much we loved these books. So please make sure you're tuning in for that. And of course,
Yes.
after that, we have our bonus episode content, which will be tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And then we will be going into Indie Mission, babies.
Woohoo!
Woo! So make sure you're picking up The Assassin of Grins and Secrets by K.E. Andrews. We cannot wait to read that book, a little bit
Yes.
darker. But please head on over and follow us on all the social media platforms at OWWR Pod. You can send us an email at ourpod@gmail.com or look at us on our blogs, our blog posts on ourpod.com. You should also please head on over to, if you're listening on Spotify, scroll down in this episode and give it a 5-star rating. It really helps us out.
Yes.
And
Also,
please
Apple Podcasts, anywhere you
rate,
can do it.
review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you could please do that, it really helps get the podcast out there as we continue on. Because, like, guys, I have a small sneak peek for you. You don't know this, but we might be doing bonus content and other types of content for the rest of the year. So we may not be starting a new series.
What?
So it's time to dive on into some of our bonus content or some of our one-off stories. And then people can join right along with a new series in 2024. But don't worry, because we have plenty of good stuff coming your way.
Yes. There's a
Uh,
lot of exciting things.
Keep an eye out on our Instagram because that is usually where we post. Laura has made some great things to be posted there. So keep an eye out there or on our reading schedule to see what we will be doing. Because, guys, Series 5 does not start until next year. So guess what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
You do not know. So
A
please,
lot of fun stuff.
a lot of fun stuff. We cannot wait. So make sure you're following along. Make sure you're picking up tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and reading it before we do that. And make sure you're picking up Assassins of Grins and Secrets.
Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate that you're here. Thanks for sharing. We love interacting with you. Join us on Discord.
Join us on Discord,
We'd
please.
really appreciate it. But thanks for listening. You guys are the best.
You guys are the best. Bye.
Bye.